gross profit, is building new and bigger enterprises that employ more people, then you will be serving the public interest. It's kind of a truism. It's not a magical force. And most importantly, it is an acknowledgement that there are conditions under which this will work, and by implication, there are conditions under which it's not going to be working. And in fact, I think it's best to understand Adam Smith not as a sort of, Moses-style giver of the laws of capitalism, but as an observer of what was in fact happening. He was writing at the very start of the existence of a market economy at a time when people were very confused. How could this possibly work? If there was nobody telling everybody what to do, how could they yet do things that would meet people's needs? And he was explaining how it could and in fact did appear to be working. But he certainly never said this will always and automatically work. And so if you look at what has happened, and this happens in cycles, we saw this happen at the start of the Industrial Revolution, right? For decades after the start of the Industrial Revolution, wages fell, life expectancy fell, people got shorter, measurably shorter. It was only after you brought, all sorts of labor standards into effect, after you had all sorts of transformations of the economy, that this actually started to work well for people. And I think you see the same thing at the end of the 19th century, particularly in the United States, where you had this agglomeration of economic power in these massive trusts, in monopolies like railroads and utilities. Again, you had an economy that was working very well for a few people, but was not generating widespread prosperity. It was also going through very sharp booms and busts. And that gave you the entire progressive era, the antitrust movement, and so on and so forth. And so I think what we've had is really starting roughly in the 1970s, a whole new wave of changes that have just undermined the conditions where we would have any right to expect that capitalism will work. And I can say what those are after you get your Chick-fil-A. The element was globalization. There was no longer the constraint that you would prefer investing domestically to somewhere else, partly because of policy changes, partly because of technological changes. If you could make more money using labor in some other country, that's what you would do. And to a dramatic extent, we saw people, in fact, go and do that. The second change was on the labor side. We made it much easier to bring in new workers to do the work. If the workers you had were not adequate, or they were getting too expensive, you screamed, "I have a labor shortage," and